Okay. Right. Okay. Welcome everyone to the Governance and Audit Committee of Monday, the 14th of February. This recording may be broadcast on the authority's internet and it may be used for training purposes by the Democratic Services Department. All attendees in view of the camera, and by attending you consenting to being filmed and to the possible use of those images and sound recordings being used. We go to the agenda. Item 1, apologies for absence.
Only from the Cabinet Member, Chair Councillor Chris Davis, that's all I've received.
And Councillor Jeremy Davis hopefully will join us in about 20 minutes time, I understand. Item 2, any declarations of interest, take into account the note on your agenda A and B. There are none. And then we go straight to item 3. This is Audit Wales Annual Audit Summary 2021, and to receive the report of Audit Wales, pages 5 to 12. Helen, are you due to take this one?
Ian's going to take the reports today.
Oh, yeah. Right,
Yep.
okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, thanks,
We'll go over to you, Ian. Okay.
Yeah, taking the annual audit summary first. This is the latest annual audit summary, and I'll briefly take you through it. It's essentially self-explanatory, but there's a key facts section at the start about the council and the county borough, and then there's a section on the Auditor General's statutory duties. There's a section on our financial audit work on the 2021 accounts, for which the Auditor General gave an unqualified opinion on. And can I also please direct you to item 9 on this committee agenda. It's an item for information, but it's the recently published data tool we've produced that compares financial data for each council, national park and fire and rescue authority in Wales, and that's from 2015-16 onwards. The next section covers our national work in response to the pandemic. Then there's a section on our local work, and it refers to us issuing a certificate on the council's 2021 performance assessment, which we do which was the last time we'll do that under the LG measure. It refers to our financial sustainability report from September 21, which you've already seen. And we've also continued to monitor progress against the statutory recommendations we made in our March 2021 report. The annual audit summary then refers briefly to the work of CIW and Estin. We also reference a couple of relevant national local government reports that we've issued since our last annual audit summary, one on discretionary services and one on regenerating town centres. And the final section is what work we had planned for 21-22 and outputs that will be finalised in due course are a report on our assurance and risk assessment work, the Spring and Forward report that had two tracer areas, which are assets and workforce, and there's also an ongoing project relating to the Cumtaff Meganog Health Partnership. So that's just a brief summary of what is in the annual audit summary, but I'm happy to take any questions you may have. Thanks.
Thank you, Ian. Councillor David Chaplin.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I have a few questions. The first is on page 5, the start of the report, and it mentions the council is made up of 33 councillors, 9 in the independent group, 15 in Labour, 2 in Park Dowlais independent group, 1 independent, and 5 community independents. Obviously, it does say that obviously there is currently 1 vacancy. Is Audit Wales concerned about the fractured nature of the council at the moment and the recent musical chairs that seems to be going on in the cabinet?
Well, I don't really want to get drawn on political matters. Political matters aren't really something that it's our role to get involved in. You know, we obviously know what's happening, you know, politically, but you know, I'm afraid I don't really want to comment on any political situation at the moment. Thanks.
Yeah, I wasn't meaning it on a political, but obviously it's fractured at the moment, and I just want to know if it was causing concern. My next question is on page 6, and it mentions that at of March 2021, the council had 25.7 million of usable financial reserves. This is equivalent to 22.6% of the council annual spending, which is the 13th highest out of the unitary authorities. Do you think that figure is acceptable as a measure? 22% of the annual spending.
Should I come in there? Basically, what we do is we compare the amount of reserves the council has compared to its spending. We commented on the lack of reserves a couple of years ago in our letter, if you remember. The position has improved greatly since then, and we're really pleased with the progress that the council's been making. And as it's, within the middle of all the authorities now, we think that's, a fairly good position for the council to be in currently.
Thank you very much, Helen. That's appreciated. It moves on to page 8, really similar. It says financial stability. We examine the council financial stability of each council in Merthyr Tydfil, and we concluded that the council's immediate financial position has improved, but it needs to consider how it best uses its resources to strengthen its financial stability over the medium term. I know the cabinet members not here. I wondered, are there plans in place and actions to look at this and drive it forward?
Sorry, is that a question for the auditors or the?
No, it would have been for an officer.
Okay.
Yes, if I can come in here, Chair.
Yeah.
And there are plans, and obviously at this point in time, we are looking at the medium-term plans going forward. There will be a report coming to council on the 2nd of March, and that will look at the plans for the next 4 years up to 25-26. We will still be showing at this stage a funding gap over those 4 years, but obviously then as we go through the next financial year, and we will be looking at efficiency projects then and how we identify those funding gaps in going forward.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. Part of the RTI plan, we really got to be looking at the way we're working and transforming the council, because carrying on with the existing model isn't really that sustainable. And looking at things 3-4 years, we should be looking a lot more long term. I know buying St Tidvil's was a strategic move to make us more commercially viable. Are we looking at any other projects downstream?
At this point in time, I'm unsure, but obviously we are looking at everything in the mix. And as you recall as well, we do have a commercial unit set up now as well. And the commercial manager has been appointed and has been in post now for a couple of months. So that will take time, but then it will be looking then with that commercial manager over the next year and looking at the whole corporate council wide as to how we're able to identify those efficiency projects going forward.
Yeah, thank you, Steve. I know he's recently been appointed. I appreciate he's got to find his feet and look to take things on board. My next question is on page 9, discretionary services, April 29. It's the 3rd paragraph down, and it says financial pressures have led to the council reducing spending and cutting services, but the pandemic has shown that local government service areas are keeping people safe and healthy. Obviously, during the pandemic, a number of services didn't happen and was cut. And obviously things opened back up, but I noticed the front line, the council offices are still shut. Are we sure that we are providing all the frontline services we should be doing? Because I know a number of residents have had concerns about their council offices still being closed.
Yes, again, if I could come in here, is that we are having a discussion about the contact centre at this point in time, and it just will be a case that those plans will be formulated and be brought forward in due course, and just in respect of the front of house and the contact centre. But then, as you rightly say, then as the pandemic opens up a little bit over this next financial year, then some of those services will start to settle down then, and hopefully we'll get back then to just something which becomes a little bit more normal, just then a little bit more normally going forward.
Thank you, Steve. My final question, you'll be glad, is on page 10. It's planned work for 2021-22. We also looked at the key challenges and opportunities facing the councils. These could have an effect on the council's ability to meet legal obligations in relation to sustainable development principle of its resources. And further down it says, bringing forward, as we move forward, learning from the pandemic, this review shows how effective the council are strengthening the ability to transform. So it goes back to my previous question. Obviously, we need to be looking at what we're doing in a different light. The pandemic has shown to us, you know, that you can work from home. We can work differently. There are different models. You know, we've got buildings that we're using that we perhaps could release and have more people working from home. You know, are we looking at things like that?
It's certainly the case, yes, with just our agile working. Is, as you'll be aware, we are trying to get all the staff up from Unit 5 and up to the Civic Centre. And then it'll be the case then of just more agile working, and many services within the council then will be having partly will be working from home, and partly they'll be working in the office. So as part of agile working, then yes, so we are looking at our state. And as I said, really, we are looking to identify then how we can use Unit 5 in a more effective way in going forward. And that's just part of the plans there.
Thank you very much, Steve. Much appreciated. Thank you, Chair. That I'm finished.
Alan Owen, you did have your hand up, but did you want to come back in on one of the questions?
No, I think Steve covered it in relation to our commercial journey. If members remember, when we brought the report in relation to setting up the commercial unit, there were 4 distinct phases to the development, and as Steve said, once we conclude the 3rd phase, which we are currently in now, in interrogating our existing internal spend, then we'd be widening the scope to look at external investments.
Okay, thanks. Councillor Chaplin, you've got your hand up. Is there? David, or is it? Well done.
Sorry, Chair. It took
That's okay.
Time to go down. Sorry.
It's all right. Right, thank you. Are there any other questions from members on the summary from the Wales Audit Office? No, nobody else. Has anybody got any comments on it? No. I think you can carry on if you want to, Ian, to item 4, and that's the work programme and timetable, pages 13 to 24.
Okay, thanks, Chair. Yeah, this is the 3rd quarterly update that we've issued on the work programme, and it's the picture as at the end of December 2021. So there's sections on our local financial audit work, the local performance audit work, our national local government studies, updates from Eston and CIW, and then information on our wider programme of national studies and a couple of good practice exchange events. So again, I'm happy to take any questions you might have on the update. Thanks.
Okay, thanks. Any questions from members? I've got a few, Ian. If I can take you to page 17. Towards the top of the page, there, direct payments. You indicated there's the status of it is drawing conclusions mid-October, drafting and publication early 2022. When is that due to be published? Because obviously the number of direct payments, I would have thought in every authority, certainly in Merthyr Tydfil, has gone up.
I haven't got anything beyond that. I can make inquiries though and then drop you a line after the meeting, if that would help.
Yes.
Make inquiries with the manager of that project.
Yes, and if you could include all the members of the Governance and Audit Committee, please.
Will do, yeah.
And on the same page, just a bit lower down, it says follow up on people sleeping rough. And that was a review of how local authorities responded to the needs of people sleeping rough during the pandemic. Following up a report on July 2020. I'm somewhat bemused as to you look over to then the right hand side of that, and it says this work is not progressing in 21-22. And my question is, why not? Because this is a huge problem for every local authority in Wales. As you know, the legislation under the Welsh Parliament was altered, and I think everybody understood the reason for that, and that was to get all the rough sleepers off where they were everywhere, to avoid them contracting COVID and to avoid them spreading it. But because the Act has been amended by the Welsh Parliament, every local authority is now left with a huge financial cost, well, which will come at us quicker than we thought, but currently is being funded by the Welsh Parliament. But our understanding, Ian, is that this funding will cease from the 1st of April 2023. So we're talking about a huge amounts of money, which, if this is not addressed properly, is going to blow a massive hole through the finances of every local authority in Wales. Ours was something in the region of 2.2 to 2.4 million. I shudder to think what the cost would be to places like Cardiff.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'm not personally involved with this project, but what I gather, there are a couple of reasons why it wasn't progressed during 21-22. The first, that it was seen with the Welsh Government Green Paper looking to change the legislation around homelessness, plus the review that the Public Service Ombudsman for Wales recently completed and published his report on it. It was felt that with those things going on, that it was a bit of a crowded space, but also that the councils needed some breathing space in terms of responding to COVID. So they needed a bit of breathing space on this issue. So it was that was the rationale for not progressing it in 21-22. But we are going to consult shortly on our possible work going forward, and that topic's going to feature as part of that consultation. So there will be the opportunity to feed in views on it, and it's, you know, just to assure you, it's not just dropped off the radar. You know, there's going to be a consultation on that. It's going to be included. So we'll take those consultation responses into account in due course, and it may feature again as part of the audit programme. So
during the next financial year, Wales Audit Office will be further reviewing this. Am I right?
If subject to consultation responses and the final decision made of what should feature in the audit programme, but it's certainly in contention, yeah. Okay, thank you. On the same page, just below that, under the heading poverty, you've got on the right hand side, yes, the interview with a nominated officer at the council. Who is likely to be the nominated officer, or have you been provided with that information yet? Yeah, I gather the team spoke to Chris Hall on that topic at the end of January. Right, so he's the nominated officer. Okay, thank you. And again, over the page 18, there are two items there: social enterprises. Under that, community resilience, same question. It says yes, interview with nominated officer of the council. Same question. Do you know who those are? For those?
too?
I don't, sorry, but I can find out and email the committee after the meeting, if that's okay.
Lovely. Okay. And on to page 19, but halfway down the page, where it's talking about follow-up, the CIW will be following up on areas for improvement identified in the assurance checks or through risk-based inspection activity with individual local authorities where necessary. And it refers then in the right-hand column, one follow-up risk-based inspection has occurred and is due to be published, and two further follow-up assurance checks. Is Merthyr Tydfil County Borough Council involved in any of those, Ian?
Sorry, I'll have to check with my CIW contacts, but that's the trouble with the work programme update, is that I can answer questions directly on the local performance audit work programme, but with all the other stuff, it's more often than not I'll have to go away and check with the relevant teams, but in this case CIW. But again, I'll do that and come back to you. Okay.
And one last question. You may have the answer for this one on page 20, on the bottom of the page there. It says taking care of the carers, how NHS bodies supported staff well-being during the COVID-19 pandemic, and the operative word there is care of the carers. Do you happen to know how they dealt with that? Did they include the thousands and thousands of unpaid carers? Because they're one of the backbones of society, and are not often taken into account.
In terms of whether they included unpaid carers in the scope of that review,
Oh, well, yes, whether the review included any unpaid carers.
I'm not cited to that. I'll double check for you on that, whether unpaid carers were part of the scope of that review.
Okay.
So I come in, I think not, because it's how the NHS body supported the staff. So I believe it wasn't, but again, we can check on that.
Yeah, I thought not as well, but I will double check.
Okay, both, that's fine. Thank you. I've got no other questions. If no other questions, has anybody got any comments on the work programme? No, there is none. Thank you, Ian, very much. Thank you. Next item is item 5. That's the verbal update from the Building and Property Services Manager on the recommendations made in the 2021 Internal Audit Report, and is to consider the verbal update of the Building Property Service Officers. It's page 25 to 30. Who officers here from Property Services?
Yeah,
Yes,
thanks,
Councillor Jones.
Yeah.
Right. Chris, right.
If I can just ask Chris to just take this item, just for information, really, for the committee. Very recently, just before Christmas, Property Services, along with the procurement commercial function and estates, transferred into my service area. As you're probably aware from the plethora of previous reports and discussions, the authority will be going out for a new director of corporate services very, very shortly. So what's currently happened is that those services, which are perhaps the most corporate we've got in the local authority, have transferred to myself, but in the fullness of time they will then transfer to the new director when that director is appointed. So currently Chris and his team are reporting directly to me. Thanks, Chris.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Alan. Thanks. So if I just go through the recommendation, so recommendation 1 was that the property services and team should ensure that contract monitoring spreadsheets are updated and record all details.
Yeah.
Just an update on that one. This has been done now. We did this in December, so we've updated all our sheets, all our spreadsheets. So that action's complete.
Right, okay.
Recommendation 2. All contracts should be reviewed to ensure they are up to date and can demonstrate value for money and in compliance with financial procedural rules contract procurement rules, and advice should be sought from procurement services. Again, we are now talking with our colleagues in procurement on the renewal of contracts when they become out of date. However, we would like to point out that during the pandemic, we did need to extend some contracts so the services could be maintained. And also during the pandemic, there were colleagues in procurement who were working on other things for the vaccine centre.
Yeah, can I just interject there? With that one, it included as part of this update to rules, training sessions were provided to all contract managers across the council. Will this be ongoing? Because these various people change. So will training continue? Yeah,
so what we've done on our new ramis system, which is the risk assessment management information system, we had a new system in August 2020. So we've now trained all building managers on this new system, and we've also taken it to the head teachers forum to kind of reinforce the use of the ramis system. And we will be going every compliance. We do a compliance visit every year, and we'll be going through the ramis system during our compliance visits as well.
Right. Okay. Thank you. On to the next one.
So recommendation 3, we've just done it. Training will be given to all building managers on the ramis system.
Yeah.
So just address that one. Yeah,
and a large number of those, as you say, are in schools. When this training took place, whoever was the appointed officer within the schools, were they taking part? Did they all take part?
Yeah, they've all taken part in training now. Yeah, they were all offered it in August 2020. Obviously, we've got 33 schools. Sorry, we needed to roll out with the head teacher, so it obviously couldn't happen overnight. And obviously, some were a lot busier, and again, we were in the middle of a pandemic, which didn't make it any easier.
Yeah. Okay, that's fine. The next one.
So recommendation for outstanding maintenance work identified on ramis needs to be actioned and addressed as a matter of priority. Priority should be given for identified works that is a breach of statutory regulations and guidelines, e.g. fire safety, electrical safety, etc. But we've got officers now currently working throughout the system, picking out all the outstanding works. Again, there's a lot of outstanding works on the system we're looking through, but we are getting through there.
Okay, and any idea when that will be? Have you got a timeline when that should be completed by?
We're hoping to get it completed by the end of April into May.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Recommendation 5, payroll leavers report should be used to identify if building managers have left or need to be reappointed for relevant building properties. The relevant database systems should be updated to ensure maintenance and inspections are carried out on all council properties. So the corporate support team leader is to provide us information when people leave now, so we know when building managers have left. But it is also worth noting that it is the responsibility of the building manager to inform us when this is happening.
Right. So that's been done. That's been attended to.
Yeah.
Okay. Next one.
So recommendation 6, the condition surveys that form part of the corporate maintenance programme 21-22 should be monitored closely to ensure that all agreed surveys are being carried out and identified work is reported and addressed to the relevant building manager. Prior to the audit, we'd already appointed SIPFA to do this. We realised we couldn't do it in-house. So we've appointed SIPFA, and we've got a 5-year programme now, a 5-year rolling programme, I should say, that condition surveys are undertaken on all council properties. Once the condition surveys are taken and we get them back, the building maintenance surveyors will QA them, and any identified works will be passed on to relevant officers, either building managers or passed on to more corporate managers.
So with that one, Chris, because you've got an awful lot of buildings under your responsibility. Again, carrying out a condition survey that'll take time. Do you have a timeline when you hope to complete all that work?
As I say, it's a 5-year rolling programme for all our buildings.
Sorry, I should rephrase that. You know, during, for example, the next financial year, how many buildings would this?
I haven't got the information with me at the moment, but we've got a programme that how many buildings are going to be hit a year. So we have got a programme that we're working through at the moment.
Right. And is that in a priority order? You know, could some buildings would be in a worse condition than others?
Yeah, we're doing all the schools first.
Right.
And we've talked to colleagues in education and what buildings they want done first at the schools.
Okay. Right, at this stage, I've got two who want to come in. I think Bob, you were first, and then Councillor David Chaplin.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not familiar with with the ramis system in detail. Is it geared mainly towards a maintenance management system, or does it incorporate a property appraisal and a condition appraisal to enable you to prioritize, either through risk or otherwise, the maintenance work that's required? Because over a 5-year period, if that's what you're saying, to carry out a condition appraisal, at the end of 5 years, you'll be starting back again. 5 years seems to me, well, in my experience, I can tell you, is far, far too long to complete a condition appraisal. It should be done in less than 12 months. Otherwise, you come back over the same work again, and your maintenance will never catch up with itself.
These are actual condition surveys. They're actually condition surveys on each building we're doing over the 5-year period.
Yes, that's my point.
And then we'll be taking the work. So once the condition survey, the condition surveys won't go into ramis, they'll go into the technology forge, which is a different system we've got for our condition surveys. But then identified works on these condition surveys will be taken out, and they will feed the maintenance report, the maintenance strategy going forward, and given to schools. Because obviously some of the work that come out this will be the school's responsibility to do, or the building's responsibility to do, and others will be corporate responsibility to do, depending on what actions are required.
Yes, but we just mentioned this in a previous question by the chairman on the SACE issues, and it's coming up later on in another item where you're talking about an estate strategy, and if you're not going to complete a condition survey within a 5-year period, you'll never get to the end of a strategy. Is the condition appraisal being outsourced for someone to do it?
Yes.
Well, then why can't their contract be limited for them to do it within 12 months to feed into your system?
It's basic budgets. We've got a budget for this year, a budget for next year, and we're obviously tied to our budgets at the moment.
You will never complete it. You won't get anywhere with the maintenance. Within 5 years, you'll have assets that will have deteriorated, and your property appraisal will be out of date. And we're talking about, there's another item coming up about the strategy for the potential disposal of surplus property. Does the condition appraisal include a functional suitability appraisal?
No, this is just the condition report, condition of the buildings.
Then how can a strategy be developed for the disposal of underutilized or surplus property when you don't really know the investment that's needed to go into that property as to whether it could be reused for something else? Your strategy over 5 years will be absolutely useless. If you can't do it in a year, it's not worth doing. And you just said that under item 1, there was considerable backlog of maintenance that you're going to catch up on. Is that built into a time scale within the 5 years?
We'll be working on that straight away. That was compliance maintenance, that is, and again, a lot of it's we're looking at a new system. A lot of it's been glitches on the system. A lot of the items have been picked up on the system that are already been done. There's a lot of building managers who are not updating systems. They're not updating their ramis systems on it, and that's highlighting on these as well.
So the condition appraisal is also going to look at statutory requirements and the investment to get those up to date?
No, the statutory requirements will be done on compliance visits, which is done yearly. We do compliance visits once every year to every building.
Then why can't you do the condition appraisal once you're doing the statutory requirement assessment?
Because we haven't got capacity in our team.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Bob. Councillor David Chaplin.
Thanks, Chair. Obviously, you said training had taken place, and importantly in schools, contracts are issued. Do they actually sign off the work when it's completed for you to know that the work has been completed on the system?
They are supposed to sign off on the system, and that's what we're doing. We're trying to get them to use the system, or we've given them the training. We've gone to schools, head teachers forums. We're trying to encourage them as much as possible. And going forward, I think it's an item we'll pick up again, is when we start picking up items on our compliance surveys, we will be giving them a certain time to update the system, get the works done. If it's not done in that time, then we'll have to escalate it to colleagues in education.
Is there a backstop with finance that if that work isn't done on the system properly, that the invoices don't get paid, or can they short-sight it by just signing off the invoices and not?
The invoice, most of the invoices, if we put the work on, the invoices come through us and we check, and we'll do a check on the invoices prior. If the schools put that is the biggest problem we've got. A lot of the schools hold their own budgets and put their own work on, so we can't see what's coming through the system.
Yeah, I think that is a problem. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Chris.
Thanks. Okay. We're on to number 7, I think, Chris.
Yeah. So number 7 is the insurance manager should ensure the property insurance policy is forwarded to relevant officers in property services. And we've agreed that, and it'll be forwarded to us, and we're going to have a meeting with Hugh and his team to go through it and discuss that.
Okay. Okay, that's so discussions will take place and have started, I presume.
Yeah.
Okay. Number 8.
Number 8 is compliance inspections needed to be monitored closely to ensure the agreed monthly inspections are carried out and any identified work is reported and addressed to relevant building managers or responsible officers. Again, this is works picked up during our compliance inspections, and it's either the schools haven't signed them off on ramis and they've been completed, or they need to be completed, and it's down to us to monitor more closely and make sure these works are done.
Yeah, and you're on schedule to do them all
this year. Yeah, this year. Last year, 2021, we were struggling with the pandemic. We only got through. I think we only got through the schools. Actually, we didn't do a lot of our other buildings, but we made sure we did all the schools. But again, we weren't allowed in certain buildings. We had to do some remotely due to we weren't allowed in buildings. I think this year we've got 21 of our buildings outstanding, which will all be completed by the end of March.
Okay. Number 8.
That's number 9, I think.
Number 9, sorry.
Compliance visit survey should include date of inspection, statement of what the inspection entailed, and a summary of issues. Again, we will just change our forms to include these things, but most of it is included in the compliance inspection, but we will update to make sure these are included as separate items going forward.
Okay. 9.
Actions identified on the compliance visit should be monitored for completeness, and compliance visit surveys certified by the compliance inspector when all identified actions have been completed. Again, this is another one we're going forward. We're going to give the schools a certain amount of time now for the items identified, picked up in the compliance survey. We'll be giving them a certain amount of time, and we will be recontact them. If they haven't been completed, then these items will be escalated to colleagues in education for them to talk to the head teachers.
Right. Okay. Next one, which is 10, is it?
11, sorry.
11, right, we are 11.
The fire risk assessment should be included on the compliance visit surveys as part of the safety inspections, and ensure the actions are addressed. This is taking place now.
Right. And 12.
12, all buildings on ramis should have tasks that relate to statutory legislation, guidelines, fire safety, electrical safety, etc. Again, yeah, that is all on ramis, and that's all included in the compliance inspections. And going forward, any new contracts that we enter into, we're asking contractors after they surveyed that they update ramis as well for their inspections and put their reports directly onto ramis, so it can be viewed by all.
So this was one of the 8 which was given the #1 priority, mandatory priority. And it says in there, start date November 21, finish date November 21. Have all these been finished now?
Yeah, well, yeah, we're working on these ones. Yeah, that's what we're doing now. So in inspections now, we're doing the ramis. We're checking the fire risk assessments as we're doing the compliance visits.
Right. Because clearly everything that's there, fire safety, electrical safety, gas safety, water, asbestos, lifting equipment, lighting protection, etc.
That's all our compliance. Yeah, a lot of things.
Yeah,
a lot of things that are identified there have been done. They were identified in the report. I think the gas tightness here, the gas tightness one, it just was different. It's just the way it had been inputted. It was part of the gas servicing, boiler servicing report, so it had all been completed.
So coming back to all the schools that we got, because obviously a number of schools, hundreds of students and staff and visitors going there. Are you happy that work has been completed, for example, in all our schools and are fully compliant?
Yeah.
Right, Bob?
Thank you, Chair. When you do the risk assessment for static compliance of fire safety and so on is done, are they risk assessed across all properties or individually for individual properties?
Individual properties. ramis do the risk assessments as we have outsourced the risk assessments.
Okay, then how do you prioritize where one school might have a severe risk compared to another to make the investment?
But we look at the reports, and obviously we prioritize when the reports come back and we see what's on the reports, then we prioritize that. You know, if I say so, it might be like a minor pick up on one building, and if something major on the other building, obviously you prioritize the major. You know, if the smoke alarms or the smoke detectors aren't working on one building, that'll be the priority that's got to be done.
Okay, and in terms of energy efficiency, there's discussion, as you know, about the commercial developing a commercial arm of the authority, and they're talking about retail investment. Retail is on the way down, housing's on the way up in terms of capital cost. If you don't do the appraisals for the excess property that we're carrying, then how can the council develop a strategy for shedding surplus property to maximize capital income, to invest in the areas that they are being asked to invest in, as there was just suggested by the Audit Wales?
That's going to be more my colleagues in the estate department to look at the estate and what properties we're carrying.
Okay, well, more specifically, I think it was Councillor Chapman asked in a couple of meetings ago, given that we now know energy costs are going through the roof, I think he asked, and you correct me if I'm wrong, has an assessment been done as part of the business case for the retail sector for taking on a commercial manager? What's going to happen with the retail bits? And I think the answer was it's still being assessed. Has that been completed? And if it is or has, then how does that fit in the business case for the authority to take into account those excess costs? Because up they're going to go.
I think that's for a different manager rather than property services, but I understand, yeah, and energy is a big part in our factor at the moment. We've got the energy team sitting there. I can tell you what we're doing in our buildings going forward, but I'm not the commercial manager.
So the energy surveys are not part of...
No, well, our energy, obviously, energy surveys in all our buildings, we've got to do that. We've updated systems in all our buildings going forward, so they're all monitored. We're monitoring, we're getting new data systems put into our buildings. We can monitor energy on a half-hourly basis going forward. So we're looking at, we can monitor electric, gas, and water going forward on a half-hour basis.
Yeah, but that's on consumption.
That's on consumption, yeah.
I'm talking about energy efficiency, where the government are pushing like hell, and so the Assembly, to invest in insulation and energy saving matters as a priority.
So all new projects going forward. So we're doing a major refurb, 21st century school up in Penedre.
Yeah.
That's going to be net zero carbon. We're looking at net zero. All our new buildings, 21st century schools are going to be net zero carbon because government's mandated that.
I understand that if you won't get planning approval. You won't get past building regulations. I'm talking about existing property, the surplus to requirements or being used or underused that the authority has to develop a strategy for disposal. We've been encouraged to do it, and the audit report is picking it up from the Wales audit and a number of other sources. And the authority is trying to develop a strategy without that information. It's not possible.
That'll be my colleagues in Estates Department who deal with the disposals of properties.
Okay, sorry, Chris. It's okay. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. I think that completes it, Chris.
Yep.
Yes, thank you for that. Does any other members have any questions? No. Does anyone have any comments? No. If not, I want to thank you, Chris, for attending. I think it was worthwhile, frankly, your attendance in the Governance and Audit Committee today, because clearly when we all read the internal audit report, as I stated, there were, I think the majority of them were prioritised by the auditors as high, which is they wanted those dealt with ASAP. I just hope that things now are on an even keel and will be progressing and should be from now on. So with that, I'll go back if there's no other comment. Oh, sorry, Geraint Thomas.
Thank you, Chair, for letting me indulge into this meeting. Obviously, at the moment, corporate buildings and estates have moved into my portfolio for the time being, as Alan explained earlier. But I think it's worthwhile for members, and especially Bob as well, who's well versed in the buildings world, that perhaps we bring a report to a future scrutiny committee on our structures going forward as far as the estates and what we propose with modernising or selling our buildings, in the future. So, Chair, if you want to bring that forward, please ask us and we'll bring a report.
Well, Geraint, I think that's a really good suggestion. I mean, you heard the discussion today. That is something that should be really scrutinised, and hopefully that can be done in the not too distant future. Bob, you wanted to come back on that?
Yeah, just to finish off with you, Chair. I'm sure that what Chris is doing is a fabulous job. It's a difficult job, and more difficult if you're trying to budget or spread a budget over a period for investment in maintenance. And it appears to me that basically this ramis system is geared towards pure maintenance, and a report of some kind of how the authority is going to develop an estate strategy for moving forward. I don't know unless you widen it beyond what Chris is doing. And I'm not getting at Chris. He's doing a job I wouldn't want to do at the moment. So the report really needs to be wider than what Chris is doing, far wider in terms of strategic developments. And I'm afraid if you're going down the road of looking at developing and being encouraged to develop the commercial sector, which we know quite clearly is going down the tubes in many places, how the hell are you going to attract more into the commercial sector when you've got property that's, as I understand it, in roughly 3 categories of vacant for 6 months, vacant over 6 months, and derelict? Then those are the areas that the strategy should be targeted at, not looking to develop something that you don't have the information for, like energy, for example. And I think Chris is on a hide into nothing. By the time he starts getting to the end of this schedule, he'll be starting all over again unless you rationalise and get a proper strategy for him to maintain. Sorry, Chair, I think I'll leave it to that.
Geraint, I think that is a way forward, frankly, to update members. And are you saying that it would be helpful if the request came from this Governance and Audit Committee?
Or if you want myself and Alan to go away and we'll do something, but it will take in a few areas of the authority, you know, like currently building maintenance has come with Chris and estates have come into us, but energy sits in neighbourhood services with some other bits and pieces.
Yeah.
And I just feel, you know, we'll have to bring one report for one strategy for the whole thing, Clive.
Yeah, you know, you're right. I'll hold that a minute because Councillor Darren Roberts wants to come in.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I mean, there's been a fair amount of scrutiny put on Chris and his team this afternoon, and I think he's dealt with it extremely well. So thank you for that, Chris. I think that Councillor Thomas's suggestion is a very sensible one, and maybe some collaborative work can be done across committees, because I know we got the chair of neighbourhood services present with us this afternoon, so maybe some collaborative work in between committees can take place rather than it just coming back to audit. Just an observation from me, Chair.
Yeah, no, I think you're right, Councillor Roberts. This could be done. It includes more than one department. If there are any members who disagree with that suggestion, you've got the opportunity to say so now. I take it for that, Geraint, that we're all happy for that to proceed on that basis. And thank you for that suggestion. Right, back to the actual report. The overarching report, which says that the recommendations under 221 members consider the verbal update provided by the Building and Property Services Manager. We've had that update. It is a recommendation, so I'll go through the voting process now. Those who wish to abstain, vote no. Those who want to vote against that recommendation, vote no. Those who support the recommendation, please vote no. From what I can see of it, May, that's unanimous.
Yes, Chair, carried.
Lovely. Thank you very much. And the officers who are in attendance for that item, they don't have to stay for the next one. Let me just get my hand down. Right. Next item is item 6, and that's the annual review and assessment of the complaint handling and effectiveness at Merthyr Tydfil County Borough Council 20 to 21. Very comprehensive report, over 70 pages of it. There's a lot of information in here. I know Simon Jones, you've been patiently waiting, and you're going to start off with the report. I know Gainer's here as well.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it is a long report. Well, the report isn't long, but it's the appendices that are taking up a lot of the time for you to read. And of course, they're there for information purposes, because the Appendix 1 and Appendix 2 are the two reports that have already been put to Cabinet for them to consider the type of complaints that we're receiving, whether or not they've been made out, whether or not they've been upheld or dismissed, and any learning from those complaints that come in. Appendix 3, 4 and 5, they're just copies of our policies, and they're there for information purposes. The social services policy has been in place since 2014. That's augmented by regulations from Welsh Government, which are very prescriptive. The corporate policy is relatively new. That came in last year. And the schools policy is again there for information purposes, but any complaints against schools tend to be resolved by the school itself. But you can see what this report is about. And to borrow a phrase from the Supply of Goods Sales Services Act, it's whether or not we are fit for purpose, whether or not the complaints department, system, processes are fit for purpose. And I think that's what we have to look at today. Section 115 of the Local Government and Elections Wales Act, that introduced this element of scrutiny into that, and it requires this committee to review and assess the council's ability to handle complaints effectively and to make reports and recommendations in relation to our ability to do that. And what I would say is the report is, I think it's about 5 pages long. It sets out the kind of complaints we get, how they are dealt with. But more importantly, I think you've got to look at today is, are we doing what we can? Is it easy for people to access our complaints policy and procedure? Once they've accessed it, is it easy and understandable to members of the public to progress a complaint? And essentially, that's it. Whether or not, the type of complaint that we get, the results, that's not really important today. It's about whether or not we are, as I said, fit for purpose in carrying out our complaints requirement. You'll see that the legal department now are managing complaints. That's, I must say, it's not new. That's been in for the last 2 years. I manage the 2 members of staff within the complaints department, and that's Gaynor, who's full-time, and Sarah, who is part-time. We've also got Caris Kennedy, the monitoring officer. She has general oversight of complaints as part of her role as a monitoring officer. And we've also got another solicitor within the team that liaises between the council and the ombudsman when cases go to the ombudsman. So we are more hands-on. I think Gaynor will say that it's been a positive change to come into the legal department. I think she feels she gets support. As a legal department, but perhaps we see things from a more holistic way than perhaps other departments in the past, where they've concentrated purely upon their own sections. And I think Gaynor will say as well that some authorities, maybe RCT, they have complaints departments within each department. They're obviously bigger councils than ours. And I'm not sure if that's a good or bad thing. By taking it out of those individual departments, number one, it gives complainants the, well, at least they can feel that it's being looked at independently, albeit in the first instance, all complaints are we try to handle them sort of within the department. But if you're complaining to a department and it's only dealt with by that department, you can get the impression, then well, what else would they come up with? So I think the fact that we have a sort of discrete complaints department, I think is good. And I'm not sure whether there's any need for us to make any changes there. Chair, there's 3 recommendations, and I've considered the recommendations as we've been going through the last couple of reports. And I'm not sure if the 3rd recommendation is necessary in the circumstances that we find ourselves in. Obviously, recommendation 2.1 is that you note the contents of the 2 reports that have been put up concerning social services complaints and corporate complaints. That's fair enough. 2.2 is that this be an annual report that we put up. 2.3, I'm saying there that the Governance and Audit Committee refer this report and comments to Cabinet. Well, that may well be a duplication of work because Cabinet have already seen the 2 reports in appendices 1 and 2. And it may well be that perhaps a better recommendation would be for this committee to note the report and to make reports and recommendations upon the council's ability to handle complaints as appropriate. So there's an action there. If you feel there is a need for any report or recommendation following on from this, maybe that would be a more appropriate 3rd recommendation, Chair. I don't propose to go through the report in any greater detail. I think it's probably easier if I feel questions or Gaynor feels questions. Otherwise, this could take an awful long time if I go through it all.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you, Simon. Gaynor?
Hi, yeah. I just wanted to make a comment that the corporate report, annual report, this is the first year. Although we presented social services to Cabinet previous years, this is the first year for a corporate report.
Right. So just to be clear, Simon, what's before us the cabinet already had? Am I right?
They've no, they've not had this report, because this report, as I said, is about whether or not we have got a system in place that's good. That somebody wants to complain, they can complain. Cabinet wouldn't have seen that report. Cabinet will have seen Appendix 1 and 2, which is the detail of the report. So they've seen that, and they've seen and some of those reports, sorry, are copied into this report. But no, they won't have seen this report. No.
Right. But they've obviously seen the makeup of the complaints, which departments, etc. They've had all that information.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. We'll deal with the third one as a consequence of questions or debate, I think. Members, have you got any questions on the report? Bob?
Thank you, Chair. Just two, if I can. It's page 56 of the agenda papers, but it's page 16 of 23 of the report. And it lists the outcomes from continuous improvement. And there's a line there that says no responsive outcome from the manager stroke department. And for 2021, it was 46 no responses. How were they dealt with, Simon? Are they dealt with as that the complaint has been resolved, or how did they feed into the figures?
Ada, can you answer that one?
Yeah, just before you come in, Simon, again, because I made a note about that, and it's repeated in more than one page there. It's for me, as a councillor and chair of this committee, I don't think it's on for any officer if a complaint is channeled from the complaints department and asking a manager for their observations. It seems from what I've read here, there are certain of them who are not responding, and that cannot be right in this day and age.
46 in the figures make a vast difference, Chair.
Absolutely. It should not be happening. And I don't know, Gaynor, you're on day to day with it, whether that must be a bit frustrating in your job when you don't get an answer. You know, it's to say the least. It's not how a local government officer should behave towards a complaint from the member of the public.
Yeah. Yes, you're right. It is a continual frustration, and we've been trying to see how we can improve this and reduce those. I think a lot of those outcomes have been off the back of the complaints, especially with corporate. We don't get it with social services, but with corporate, where the complaint has been about continual non-collection of a refuse. So what they do when the managers will send somebody out, and then it'll get resolved, but then they don't feed back to us. Although we try and chase these up, as you can imagine, other complaints are coming in and we haven't got the time to do that. So what we've done now, we've introduced a diary system, so a diarised system. So those, especially the sort of, because we focused it's mainly on the refuse department, is that we are going to do, if we've had a complaint in, most of the time the complainants will provide a telephone number. So we are doing a diarised system now for the day of their collection, later that day, to ring the complainant and say, did they come? Did they collect it this time? Did you have your assisted collection? And then we will then be able to close it ourselves from the complaint department.
Yeah. So has this issue been raised at chief officer level or even higher for them to tell their staff, you know, if you get a query from the complaints department, you'll have to return what your views are.
Yeah.
So has it been taken up at a senior level?
What I'm actually doing now, and this has come in from the back of the high amount of no responses, is that if we're in a position where we have to chase the complaint, we do copy in the senior officer now into the chase up. So whereas we used to just chase it up directly with the manager, now we copy in the senior officer in as well.
Right, because in a year's time, when there's a further summary, I would want to see, and I'm sure all the members of this committee, that there is not 46 in that column. I think it should be nil. Okay. Simon, you wanted to come back?
No, not sure.
Okay, okay. Right. Are there any other questions? Well, you just actually mentioned the one, Gaynor, on page 37 under 6.9. And it's the second sentence starts, the biggest increase in complaints were in relation to recycling refuse. Of the 402 complaints received, only 15 progressed at stage 2, which suggests the complaint system works, so the vast majority resolved at stage 1.
Yeah.
And it goes on to say further on, it's noted that although there are 139 complaints regarding recycling refuse, only 2 progressed to stage 2, which suggests the complaints were quickly and satisfactorily addressed. So that's fine. But I note from the figure that it's just not this year, the year before, for example, and I can understand it because recycling and refuse, you know, they're out there sometimes 7 days a week when they're covering bank holiday, and there are issues. We see them as councillors. What I want to know, what I'm sure the members want to know, is when you see a hike in those complaints and they have to be reported, what is the department doing about them to resolve them so that they don't come forward? You don't have residents being frustrated, sometimes I'm sure quite irate, and the issue where there's, in this case, there's quite a high number of complaints. What's the feedback from the department? What's the learning techniques that they've got from this?
I mean, for the refuse, I mean, the reason that the figures are so high is because it does affect every resident of Merthyr. So that the figures are always going to be higher than any other department because it's a facility that everybody utilises. I think that we saw a spike during lockdown because people were, I mean, some of the complaints are from non-collection, or it might be that they're not putting, some are complaining about they're not putting their bins back as they've put them out in the same order with the trolleys. So it can be, and that's why there's a percentage of those that are not upheld, because we can't expect the crew to put, they haven't got the time to put them all back in order. Although the member of public has the right to make that complaint, and if they feel disgruntled by that, they have the opportunity, but it doesn't mean it's going to get upheld, because we have to try and explain then that the crew haven't got that much time. Sometimes they've had perhaps notes put on the bin, well, then I think on a, you know, sort of items in there. So I think it's educating then the public as well on, you know, what they can put in there, what they can't put in there. And I know obviously during lockdown, people were at home more. They were probably ordering more items online, which was creating more cardboard refuse. So I think it's then we sort of work quite closely with the team, that whether they can send wardens down then if it's a continuing problem. And I think that's why you'll see such a low percentage of stage 1s going to stage 2s, is trying to resolve it at stage 1.
Yeah, and I can understand the point about the triple box trolley, because I'm sure on a day when it's pouring with rain and you go out, put your trolley in and find the 3 boxes are all over the place. It's like a bit of a puzzle to make sure you put them one on top of each other in the right order, in the right way round. And I can understand, particularly elderly people, complain about that. But on the other hand, it's not the job, unfortunately.
No,
not the job, is it, of the.
But what we've done as well is if we have complainants from elderly people, and is that we promote then the assisted collection.
Right.
So that's a service that we do offer, because, you know, elderly people shouldn't be struggling too much because we have that, and the assisted collection does work well.
And that's the sort of thing which, as a result of these complaints, the feedback, you know, the department should be broadcasting that a bit more, because I'm aware of the assisted scheme.
Yeah.
I don't think every resident in the county borough is well aware of it, you know?
No.
But going back to the point I made, there should be feedback because of the number of issues that are going there as to what they are doing or what they're trying to do with it. One other thing, this is going to page 62. It says here, top of it, some examples of actions arising from outcomes of investigations of complaints, they summarised. And it goes on to say, first one, the common theme report is a lack of information and communications, including failure to respond within appropriate timescales to messages and failure to update customers on decisions, delays in assessment. So if a complaint is made, it comes to you, you go to the department, and there is a long gap. You get a frustrated resident becoming even more frustrated because there's silence and nobody's coming back.
Yeah.
So, go on, sorry.
Sorry. When we acknowledge a complaint, whether it's a corporate or social services, we always advise that the manager will endeavour to respond within the relevant timescales. So for corporate is 20 working days, and for social services is 15 working days. So they are advised from the onset the timescale that they can expect before they will have a response. Hopefully some will be responded to before that, but I think it's probably better to you know, under promise and over deliver.
Yeah, and some of these will take some time, won't they, to complaints of a complex nature.
Yeah.
Do you give, or does the department try and give to that complainant a reasonably good idea how long it's going to take?
Not when we acknowledge it first, we put it within the timescales of 20 working days or 15. If we feel, especially with the more complex complaints, those that are in social services remit, that you know, an extension of time will be required, we well within the guidelines, the Welsh Government guidelines, to advise the complainant that an extension will be required. And therefore, we will, you know, as long as we write to them and keep them informed, because I agree, there's nothing worse than when somebody puts a complaint in and then it just goes radio silence and they have no idea what's happening. So I think that we in the complaints department keep that line of communication up.
And of course, they can be more complex, usually in social services.
Mostly in social services.
And that some of those can take a while. So they're kept informed.
They are kept informed
all the time, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, it's 15 working days with social services, which is a shorter timescale, incredibly, than corporate. However, we do with social services as well, depending on the complexity of the complaint, is we offer a meeting. Again, this is within the Welsh Government guidelines. So we meet complaints, the manager and the complainant, and you know, we've been doing that via Teams or teleconference through the times that we've been in lockdown, and that's you know, an essential part of the social services process in order to address the concerns, and mostly, you know, confidently, most of the time, I don't jinx myself, that actually helps to resolve it, because with social services, and sometimes it can be in adult services, is not quite understanding what's happening or knowledge. So it's having that chance to have that conversation. It does work well, which again, obviously is reflected in the low percentage of stage 2 that come from the stage 1s. Yeah,
indeed. And the figures in social services, I've studied them, are very good, aren't they? You know, it's a huge department.
Touch wood.
All sorts of problems daily there.
Yeah.
And the number of complaints there, really, in comparison to the amount of work with a whole range of people.
I assess them on receiving them, whether they are a complaint or case management, and sometimes it can be just case management, which you know, somebody's not getting back to them. We're not going to take that down the, you know, unless it continues, unless there's a repeat of that. But we would normally, you know, act as a, because I always make it clear, I'm not employed by social services. So although I come under the umbrella of the local authority, I'm not employed by social services. So I'm there to support the complainant as well.
Yeah, indeed. Can I take you to it's page 11 of 23 of your report. It's page 51 of the papers.
51.
So that is in relation to Q1 2020 to 21. Okay. Halfway down there, it's environment and environmental health. And I noticed the complaint at stage 1 with 27. And it goes on to say that clause within timescale, 3 not merited, 7 discontinued. I for one would be, because there's a split there. There's the environmental health statutory functions, and then there's the environment, which couldn't cover a wide area of sins. But I can't deduce from that an idea of what the complaints were.
Right.
Whether they mostly in the environment, or were they mostly as far as environmental health was concerned?
Yeah, I mean, I can, you know, on further reports expand on that, because we have more details in the Excel system that we use to record the complaints. The data, the categories that are on that table there are the categories that the Ombudsman want to submit our data to them. So those are the what they ask for. But I mean, I can expand on, you know, in further reports on further.
It's only a suggestion for me, but you take an example, you know, recycling refuse and a figure like that.
Yeah.
If there's a high figure in there, can I suggest that in the next summary next year that it perhaps expanded a bit on where there's high numbers, and coming back to you, I presume you would know the overall reasons for that and what they mainly were.
Every complaint that is submitted and is reflected in those stats there is recorded on an Excel spreadsheet. So it's the individual details and along with a description then at the end, you know, brief description, but a description on what the complaint is about. Now, when the Ombudsman brought out the complaint standards authority that we have to give data every quarter, they brought in these categories that they wanted us to put the complaints in. My social services ones is a lot broader than that, because as you can imagine, the information that's attached.
Yeah.
Because in fact, when the Ombudsman created those data just first, they wanted us to put refuse in with environmental, and you can imagine the high figure that would be just under. So as a complaints, you know, along with my counterparts and other authorities, we said that's just going to be such a high figure. So we asked for that to be broken down again. But I certainly got the information that I can provide to break down again. And you probably might find a bit more in the annual corporate annual report.
Yeah, so you had 402, is it total of 402, I think, for the last full year.
Corporate,
And 10 of those were COVID related?
COVID related, yeah.
So the number decreased from 392, had increased somewhat, but not a hell of a lot from the year before. But I noticed intriguingly is that it's somewhere, it's obviously more and more people are getting used to putting the complaint online rather than picking up the phone, getting frustrated that the phone's not answered straight away. They can't get through to the right person straight away. But
I would say that about,
the public seem to be more circumspect in what to do with it.
I would say probably 90% of our complaints that come through online, and that's from social services, adult services, you know, to any corporate one as well. We didn't actually receive in 2021 a formal complaint that they weren't able to submit a complaint in person, because obviously the contact centre was the one-stop shop was closed. I didn't actually receive many complaints prior to COVID, where people would walk in. They would come in sometimes and fill a form. They still got that facility. Our forms are located in all our public areas as well that are open, as in the COTS team or in the homes. So they still have that option. But I think it has been very surprising that all age brackets have been able to submit a complaint online, and I've been holding Teams meetings with of all ages.
Yeah, and reading that as to where the forms can be obtained.
Yeah.
Is it possible, for example, for these forms to be in all the libraries and the leisure centres, or not?
Well, the only difficulty with us putting it in the leisure centre is that if they've got a complaint about the leisure centre, then they go in to fill that form in. And obviously we don't deal with the leisure trust complaints.
Right.
So what we would find then is somebody might be filling it in, sending it to me, and then I'm going to be saying I'm going to be sending it on.
Okay, and I haven't actually seen the forms, but I presume they're pretty simple for anybody to fill in.
Yeah, they're obviously in English. The English and Welsh is on each of the forms. It's and probably this is why people are emailing, because the forms, we do ask a number of questions regarding the department, what the desired outcome is, which is important. Have they complained previously? Who the complaint is for. So I think what members of the public tend to do is email, because we make it quite public, our email address. The email address for complaints is looked up by myself and Sarah. We both got access to it, so and we both take leave opposite each other. So there's always somebody there to read those emails. I think they tend to say, "I've got a complaint. It's really complex. Can you give me a ring?" So that's when we do that with them.
I think reading the report, you've got a system, because you're going to get vexatious complaints, or somebody who keeps on about the same subject or the area of the same subject. You've got a system in being to deal with those, because some of these people can take up a hell of a lot of your time, can't they?
Yes, they can. And unfortunately, you know, as I explained to managers, they might have 20, 30 complaints they deal with, but when somebody has got something that they feel quite passionate about, that's just their life, and that is just all that they are focused on. So they don't care if they go into email us 20, 30 times a day, because if you're not giving them the response that they want, they will continue to make that complaint. But what we have to try and be clear is, and in a very polite way, is, and I will say legal has been a fantastic support to me with this, is when we get to that point, we have to say, we're not going to comment any further, and you have exhausted the local authorities process, and then they have the option of going to the Ombudsman.
Okay, thank you, Gaynor. Any members got any questions on this report? No? Any members got any comments to make? No? Well, I'll make the comment. It's very interesting. I know there was 70 odd pages of it, but I was determined to get through it all. And from what I can see there, the complaint system is working. And, you know, we can always fine tune it and do other things to add on to it. And I think that will happen, you know, over time. And to be perfectly honest, it might sound surprising. I'm sure I might be the only councillor, but no one's ever approached me about an issue and asked me specifically, I don't know how to complain. So we appear to have cracked that one. that they can, for example, go onto the website, find it, fill it in, and it goes on from there. So for me, it seems to be working right across the board. And you know, yourself and your assistant there and Simon are clearly this is the first report that we've had, but in my opinion, it's quite extensive and a very good report and very informative. And thank you all for contributing to that. Now I'll come back to Simon's point originally as to this recommendation 2.3. You know, apart from the fact that you know, I've mentioned that we can zoom in and produce, you've got the figures, more details on where there is a high number and it can be a trend. I don't know whether we can embody that in recommendation 2.3, Simon?
Yeah, Chair, that would be a sensible one.
You're very good with words, Simon, as I know from my chairing licensing days. If we can...
It's a tricky one, this, you know what I mean? Obviously, it's strange in that an increase in complaints is actually for the department a success because it shows that people know how to complain.
Yeah.
The fact that things aren't, I mean, not many go to stage 2. Again, that shows that once you've complained, the process works. So, you know, to try and find things to improve upon, clearly what you said about a sort of a breakdown where there are high numbers, such as environmental health and environmental services, that's good. I was thinking maybe if you sent a questionnaire to everybody, but that's asking for trouble in some respects.
Yeah.
It's going to, number one, it's going to create an awful lot of work for the department itself. But if somebody's not satisfied with the outcome of the complaint, and it might just be justifiable, they're going to complain again. So I'm not sure. Next year, I think perhaps we could look at comparable data with other authorities to see whether or not our figures are in line with neighbouring authorities, to see whether or not we're an outlier or something like that. We can look at that. But certainly, Chair, you know, my view was maybe recommendation 3 should be that the report is noted and the Audit and Governance Committee make report and recommendations as appropriate. So over and above that, Chair, I don't think I can add much more.
Yeah, which will take into account the fact that we'd like more detail on where there are, you know, the hikes. As long as everybody goes along with that, I'm happy. Okay, if there are no other comments, go back to the recommendations, which are on page 31 to 1, comments of the report, the contents of the report, and appendices 1 and 2. Be noted, and 2.2, an annual update in relation to corporate complaints and compliments be provided to the Governance Audit Committee, and item 2.3 is to note the report and whatever Simon said in the rest of it. I think we got the message there. Myra, are you reasonably okay with the wording for 2.3?
Yes, Chair.
Right, I thought he would be. Right, I'll take the vote now then. Those are the recommendations. For all those recommendations, if anybody wants to abstain, vote now. Anybody wish to vote against, vote no. All those in favour of the 3 recommendations, please vote no. I think that's completed.
That's carried, Chair. Yes, Chair. That's carried.
Yeah, if you would lower your hands, please. Thank you. Try and lower my hand. Right. The next item is item 7, and that's the updated fall work programme 21-22. And this is the report of the head of Regional Internal Audit Service, pages 103 to 108. Mark?
Yes. Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, a pretty short report is the standard report that you get in terms of the forward work programme. It's quite a short turnaround since the last meeting. So the items that we're expecting at the moment for the next meeting are in paragraph 4.2 on page 104. Annual risk management report and corporate risk register, Audit Wales grant certification, internal audit information reports, and forward work programme for, well, that may not actually appear because obviously we're going into a new municipal year, so we'll start the process again after May. But there may be some other items because it wasn't a huge amount of time to consult with various officers on other items, so there may be some additional items to appear at that meeting. So that was it really, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Jeremy Davis.
Sorry, Chair, like your hand.
Okay, sorry, I thought you wanted to ask a question. Right, any questions on report from Mark? No, no questions, any comments? If not, I'm not going to take a vote on this because it's just really for information, really, isn't it? That is currently what is included in the forward work programme. So thank you for that, Mark. The next item is number 8, internal audit information reports, 109 to 110. Now, you should all, hopefully, you've all had access and been able to read the report there in relation to the fuel and fueling and fuel cards, etc. Now, there is limited assurance there, and I think there's 12 recommendations. And I'm going to suggest to members that because of the limited assurance that this report is brought into and dealt with in the same way as we dealt with the property service report at the next meeting on the 4th of April. So the officers concerned have got plenty of time to deal with this between now and the 4th of April. And I move that from the chair that report is agended for the 4th of April.
I second that, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Chaplin. And I will take a vote on that. All those in favour of that report coming on the 4th of April, please vote now.
Votes carried, Chair.
Yeah, thank you. So there we are. Let me get my hand out. There we are, Mark. There's another item on the agenda for the 4th of April.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Right. Item 9 from the Audit Wales Financial Sustainability Data Tool, which was mentioned by Ian Phillips earlier on. That's an information report. Item 10, I think reflection, evaluation and meeting, we've done quite well dealing with the items so far today. So I thank everyone for their input with that. Item 11, any other business deemed urgent by the chair? I have none. And can I thank you all, including officers and members, for your attendance today and declare the meeting closed. Thank you very much. See you.